Next project up on the project video list is basically a fun one for me, in that this is something for myself. The project that I have in mind is a Carvers Mallet. Hello everybody, I'm Dan. Welcome to another adventure at Therapy Woodworks. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to hit the bells and subscribe and all the rest of that stuff if you're not already a subscriber. If you're already a subscriber, thank you kindly. What this is, it's a piece of plum branch from a plum tree that was on the property that I owned for a quarter of a century. Part of the branch fell down and my son astutely salvaged it, being a hardwood. He saw some value in it. The unfortunate part about it is that we didn't store it very good, and it's got some cracks in it, and I didn't let it dry really thoroughly and properly. So it's going to be a little bit unstable, especially for the project that I have in mind. Currently, and you've seen in some of my videos, I'm using a carpenter's hammer as a mallet, and I'm getting tired of it, so I'm going to make myself a special family heirloom plum tree carving mallet out of this particular piece. The other intention of this video also is to try out my new dust extraction system. That one right there. So we're going to turn this mallet on the lathe, and we're really going to put that dust extraction system to the test. There's some significant cracking going on in this piece of plum branch. I'm a little scared that it's going to fly apart on me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to stabilize it, the cracks, with some epoxy. So it's two parts. You got to knead it together and then squeegee it into the cracks. And I'm hoping that will stabilize it. But again, the whole intention is to try and stabilize some of the checking and cracking in here so I can put it on the lathe. Once I got it on the lathe, the idea is to get it to a round enough shape. PC7 epoxy all mixed up here. Comes in a 2-part tube. It's a fairly thick product. I put it on the board. We've mixed it up thoroughly, and I am just squishing it into the cracks as much and as hard as I can, trying to get that product to squish down inside the crack as much as I can. Don't forget, this isn't going to stay on the final product. This is all going to get turned off on the lathe. I'm really only doing this just to stabilize it so it doesn't blow into a million pieces and catch me on the chin. I kind of don't want that to happen. I like my chin. All right, seeing that this is working so well, I'm going to mix up some more and fill the whole thing. You guys don't need to see that. All right, so I've got this plum branch turned down to a point now. It's roughed out, and it's got its shape, and all the rough edges are off of it. I like some of the color that's coming through. It's kind of neat. I know when we first cut the tree, we got this purplish tinge, and it was kind of cool. Some of that purplish tinge is faded. I have a big problem. Some of the cracking in here is fairly substantial. I haven't quite determined yet whether this is going to turn into a resin project or I carry on trying to turn it down. This is just the handle, but I think this crack is pretty deep, and this may turn into a resin project, I do believe. I'm kind of happy to report though that my lathe dust extraction system, it probably gets a B. A lot of the chips are falling outside of the bin, but it's definitely not the huge mess that I had prior to having a dust extraction system, so that's okay. I've got this down to a final shape that I'm happy with. My big grizzly bear man paws will fit around it. I'm sure it'll still have some nice weight to it. I'm fairly pleased with how the checking turned out and the cracking, because I mean, I knew that some of it would go all the way through, but in the handle part, there's not a whole lot of filling to do. And that's kind of okay. We've just got this main big part here on the actual head of the mallet itself. So now I've got it happy, I'm happy with it to pretty much the final shape. I'm going to fill it full of epoxy and give it a final turn to a final shape and see how it turns out. Some of the nice red, purple colors are coming out on it. So the one thing I am going to do, I'm just going to V-groove the edges of the cracks there so the epoxy has something to bite onto a little bit more, just using a regular chisel and just softening up the edges and making them nice and smooth, V-grooving it and removing some of the loose edges. Get the mallet off the lathe here, and it's about time to fill all these little cracks and whatnot, and then we'll throw it back on the lathe and turn it down to the final shape and sand it up and make it all beautiful. I got another aha Dan idea. So I've got this, I want some epoxy and I want it black, but just to fill these cracks, it's gonna be difficult to use your typical resin. So what I've got is, I've got some automotive seam sealer here, and it's a 2-part epoxy, but it comes out a lot thicker, so it'll stay in place and not flow all over the place. And it's very, very black, and I like it. I'm gonna give it a whirl, see what happens. Another first for Dan's automotive woodworking. This is not something that I would normally do because it's actually very expensive stuff. This is $100 worth of material. But like I say, I haven't got a whole lot left, and I gotta use it up. And I'm just gonna mix it up, and I'm just going to use a spreader. If you guys have ever applied filler to drywall, you kind of want to have a little bit of a build up over the groove. So when I put it back on the lathe and do just a final turn, is just to clean it up. At the very least, I've saved my plum tree branch. Who knows, maybe it'll turn into a family heirloom. You know, one of those things that your children cherish because you made it. The extraction system on the lathe removed like 99.9% of the dust in the environment. I was extremely impressed. I'm actually going to let this harden up for a number of days. It'll do, little donkey, it'll do. So it's been 3 days since I applied this seam sealer. It's gotten pretty hard, 2-part epoxy. I've been testing it day in and day out every once in a while just to see how it was curing and see how it was going to peel off the wood and things like that. And it's doing pretty good. So I think I'm going to carry on and try and smooth out that sealer. See how it goes. All right, finished sanding it. It's up to 340 grit, 340, 360, something like that. Anyways, it's starting to look really, really nice. I like it. You can see the red colors coming out in the plum branch, and it's quite the contrast between the reds and the yellows and the black stripes in it. It's kind of turned out okay. I think my finish of choice is going to be shellac so that I can recoat the thing every time I bang it up and beat it up. Here we go with the Bullseye Clear Shellac. And I've been using these foam brushes lately. I've been getting some good success. So I'm going to carry on. So we have the shellac application. You just want to keep it really, really wet. God, I love the lathe. It makes applying finishes and sanding so much easier. Steak Kimasabi. Whew. I deserve a cold one, my friends. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me for my rudeness. Wasn't very smart. Would have come out the other end. Oh, would have been a fart. My granddaughter's favorite poem. Okay, I lied. It's my favorite poem.